Next session, we're actually ahead of schedule a bit, so which is fine. Sam will talk and showcase the Mojaloop Fintech Sandbox.
Hi, everyone. How are you all doing? Good, thank you. Thank you, Simeon, for giving me this opportunity to talk about the Mojaloop Fintech Sandbox. Can I take the liberty to ask a question? What does sandbox mean to you? Maybe two answers. Jane, you smiled, so. Yeah. What does it mean?
It's a playground for a bunch of little children.
Awesome.
Yeah, agreed. It's a playground to actually play with things.
Okay. Playground to play with things. Any other hands? What does a sandbox? Yes, Paul.
The IT in me says the sandbox is isolated. You know, it's limited.
What does a sandbox mean to you?
You can't break things.
You can't break things. Awesome. Yes.
It's a swimming pool for training on how to swim.
Nice. Swimming pool for training how to swim. Warren?
No.
Okay. Warren thinks sandbox is a no-no. Anyone else? Thank you. Thanks for the answers. It was great. My name is Samuel Kumari. I'm a Mojaloop community contributor. I'm with Infitex, Inclusive Financial Technology Experts, and I'm, let me say, leading this FinTech Sandbox workstream for this PI, for the past PI. In my childhood, I didn't know what a sandbox was, and earlier I was looking for images for a sandbox, and I saw a box with sand and some stuff in it. That was new to me. That was the first time I was seeing that. I only know technology sandboxes where we use. I mean, I did have a good childhood. I played with real sand and real birds, animals, so no complaints there. So we have some definitions and understandings, but we'll see what we were able to do with FinTech Sandbox, this PI. Thank you to all the contributors. Some people made good contributions to this. Some people had to approve, some of the contributors have to approve to use the cloud platforms and the funding needed for this. So thank you everyone for making this happen. The objectives for this PI were mainly two things. Get a sandbox up and running with the latest Mojaloop release, and then give access to someone like a fintech or a system integrator, get them on board. So I've listed the details there, and during this PI, we were able to get a sandbox up and running with the latest Mojaloop release, 14.10. And as we'll see later, we were able to give access to two of the Rwandan SI. So Mojaloop Foundation requested and approved access to Orion Systems and Wired. So I would say this: if you are interested in getting access as a fintech, reach out to someone from the Mojaloop Foundation or a community member so that they can direct your request there and get access. So we'll see the demo. Can I request Elaine from Wired Systems to come here and demonstrate what we have on the sandbox? So Wired and Orion Systems, for those of you who were here yesterday, we were able to see how they were able to customize some of the components in Mojaloop, get it running, access the sandbox, explore. And as some of you said, they were able to play with things around without breaking. So that was great to see. Elaine, please.
Yeah, so for those of you who are in the room yesterday, so you saw our presentation. So what we had done, basically, we kind of like went through this first to kind of understand what the platform made available for us, right? So for those who are trying, like someone said here, it's a playground, it's a swimming pool for learning how to swim. So basically you can try things here, see how things work, and then you can basically do your own implementation at ease, knowing exactly what's out there. So, yeah. All right, so here basically you would do a lookup based on, this is the first part. You do a lookup based on the number, and then you get, the amount. You select GBP. All right. Okay, and then you can kind of get the code. The code basically is the amount plus whatever fees are attached to this transaction, and then for the user or your client, for your platform to confirm whether they want to proceed with that transaction, right? And then proceed. And then here in the middle, you basically can see the process flow, right? Just to make you, as a developer, understand what you need to do, what kind of APIs you need to call in the back end, and things like that. So, and that's it, right?
Thank you for that. This is a simple yet, I think, very powerful demo because there are a lot of aspects to this. There is a lot happening in the background. For example, yesterday with Mojaloop and testing toolkit, or the Mojaloop toolkit, we saw that we are able to do this even on our local machines. But here, this is real Mojaloop. It's not production quality, but it is something that can be enhanced and customized into a production quality system. So we are getting this experience of looking at from the outside what's happening. So this is a simple peer-to-peer. And then with the testing toolkit, for those of you who were able to use it yesterday or before, we can see the inbound requests and outbound requests, and at a very granular level, we can see what kind of requests went in. For example, when we click the initial lookup part, like the search button, we can see the get parties calls here and put parties, and then we have codes. When we said get the code for this is the currency, and then finally the transfer requests. So we can similarly use this to validate the system. So there is this option where we have a test runner, and we can use some collections that are already provided, or add some collections of our own, and then run those here as well. I also want to show one additional aspect here. So this is called the finance portal. We have this business operations framework in the code, which enables finance portal. And here, this is a tool for the operations teams, the hub operations or the technical operations team, to manage or view what's happening inside of the switch. So in this transfer side of things, we can see, okay, as a hub operator, I want to see what all transfers are happening. So when I click this find transfers with like a blank filter, then I can see all the transfers that happened here in the last few minutes. I can offer some filters here, and then also look at the transfers, and I can go to the detail here of each of these and see who are the payer and the payee. You can see some of the details, which state these transfers are in, the payer and payee DFSPs involved, etc. Let me get back to the presentation. All right, so that's the demo. So the goals, reiterating again, Sandbox with the latest Mojaloop stable release, 14.10 or greater. A check on that. And then the simple process for this PI, for the last PI 20, until we come up with a scalable process is, as I mentioned, ask one of the foundation members or the community contributors for access to the Sandbox, and then get approval. And the next goal was onboard at least one fintech. I think we have 2 of them having access. They're approved by the Mojaloop Foundation. And then maintenance of the Sandbox if something goes wrong. So we were able to meet those, but there is further work to be done on a few things which we'll cover in the roadmap. So initially we had the Sandbox deployed, refreshed, because there was a new version, 14.00, 14.10, 14.11. And then access approved and provided to the Rwandan fintechs or SIs. What are the features here? So we have one of the roadmap items for this upcoming PI, upcoming quarter, is to come up with good documentation on the various tools available in the Mojaloop ecosystem. We have Miniloop, we have Mojaloop toolkit, we have IAC, infrastructure as code, and that is used to deploy the Sandbox. So that everyone is able to see what characteristics or what use cases each of those addresses, and then pick and choose an option that fits best for their scenario and requirement. So the features we have right now on the Sandbox are the several use cases that are supported by Mojaloop core. We have peer-to-peer, bulk, third-party payments, settlements, request to pay, and several other non-functional or monitoring capabilities as well. This was deployed using IAC, so there is whatever happens on the system, we have history, traceability, we have a tech support dashboard to pipelines, which we can use to rerun some tests or rerun validations. And we have a VPN, virtual private network setup for hub access so that it's safe. And we have specific simulators to simulate different scenarios. So how, for example, how a real financial service provider or a bank or a mobile wallet implementation looks like. We've simulated those using components called PM4MLs or payment managers. And these use some existing open source components and payment manager, which is currently in the process of going through the process of adoption into Mojaloop ecosystem. We have a gateway for IP filtering and firewalls. We have finance portal, which we just saw with role-based access control. We have a reporting engine for generating settlements reports for FSPs. And then, of course, security components to support mutual TLS, JSON Web Signature, and interledger packets. So the various vaults and key secret management needed, all these features are available. We have support for onboarding FSPs into the system. And there are several user interfaces as well provided. We saw a couple of them today. The finance portal, the toolkit, Mojaloop toolkit UI, and user UI for the simulated FSPs as well, which can show what transfers went through their system and various aspects of that. So the goals for the next PI. Obviously, we've been talking about V15. Tomorrow we have the session for the V15 update, but we have that Mojaloop V15, which has bulk support for adoption out of the box. We have separation of dependencies, which makes maintaining Mojaloop easier. So the goal is that we'll refresh this sandbox with V15 to run it when needed, when requested by the Mojaloop Foundation. And we also want to work on one thing. The goal for this PI20, was to get a sandbox up and running with the release and give access to the fintechs who want to explore and play around with it. But the cost of that is not optimal yet. It's not where we like it to be yet. So if you're able to prioritize that, we'd like to bring down the cost to see, or to develop different options to narrow down the system for low usage scenarios, and for high usage, we can have the default version. So things like that. And then there is this other aspect also. We want to document the capabilities of various tools. As I mentioned earlier, we have the infrastructure as code, Miniloop, toolkit, to provide options to the community. What best fits your scenario? What are the characteristics? What is the footprint of each? So that you can make a more informed decision on that. And then we also want to continue this process of adopting a payment manager into Mojaloop. So this is currently with the design authority. So we'd like for the community to accelerate that process to give clarity on that as well. These are the goals and what we were able to do this PI. I don't know how we are doing on time, but if you have any questions, we can take those. Simeon, do we still have time? Or okay. Any questions? Or does anyone here wants to add anything? Yeah, it was great for me to have Orion Systems and Widen be able to have access and explore, and as you said, use it as a sandbox, as a playground. So I hope more of you join that as well.
Thanks, Sam. I just wanted to check the documentation, the process, the different options, all of that stuff. Are you going to be giving it to us to put into the roadmap, the journey roadmap, as part of that journey to a POC, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes, it should be. We should be able to use it in all those places. So we have some documentation now. We have blogs and we have some video walkthroughs and tutorials on how to get things done. But I think we need more. We need some clarity on what is the Miniloop suited for, what is the toolkit suited for. If you're a developer, how do you use each of these? Can you use infrastructure as code? So I think we're working on that. We had some workshops with Paul Macon, But we'd like to submit to the, develop something, submit to the community for review and feedback, and then publish with the adoption tools. Miller, thank you.
Yeah, hey Sam. One of the things on documentation that might be helpful is an outcome of the development of on-premises deployment. And I don't mean Miniloop, I mean for an actual production scale deployment. Well, we recognize that in the fullness of time, it makes more sense for cloud deployments using IAC or its derivatives. But I would think that a on-premises deployment pattern would be a good thing for us to document. We're still seeing the need in regulated environments for the use of traditional data centers. So, thank you.
Great question, Miller, and aspect. Actually, I see David Fry on the call on Zoom. David, are you able to speak, take that question?
Yeah, I didn't hear it as much of a question as a comment. I think we do need to include that as one of the primary options that we need to support going through in terms of the technologies that are used and how they would be deployed. And so I don't know if I understood it as a question or not. Miller, can you clarify a
You're
little
right.
bit?
I think it's a comment. But David, can you touch on the work being done to support other platforms, like more other cloud providers as well, and maybe on-premise following that?
Sure. And I think we're going to discuss this tomorrow as well. But in general, the cloud agnostic version of the IAC was brought in as the main branch, and we were able to do separation of the different AWS components out of the main modules of the IAC in order to support both on-prem implementations as well as other cloud provider implementations of IAC. So that is definitely a focus for us to look at how the different cloud agnostic modules would be implemented for those different scenarios, either on-prem bare metal or managed cloud for GCP or AWS and Azure, or doing a kind of complete stack as we're doing with AWS for a different cloud provider. So those are things that are on the roadmap.
Thanks, David. Miller.
Yeah, if I could, then I'll redirect. This time it'll be a question. So, given that RNDPS, the Rwanda program, is just kicking off and getting underway, and it's our understanding they'll be using an on-premises data deployment as well as for computation. So, could we see some community effort around the specifically configuring for a traditional data center? The other things that David mentioned are also quite interesting, but it would seem to me that maybe getting a prioritization from the community as to what they'd find most valuable. And that would include things like how many boxes do I need to buy? How big are they? How many data centers do I need? Those things that are all then from evidence based on what you gain, resiliency, business continuity, and the other things you'll need in that kind of data center environment. So it's a question, could we?
Great. I'm looking forward to doing work on all those things, and I'd like to see some prioritization on a couple of items. From my perspective, being able to have the manageability of an environment, the pipelines through GitLab, and that, so the control plane aspects of the IAC being completely divorced from a particular cloud provider allows us then to be free to continue development of a different IAC into say AWS, GCP, or on-prem with the greatest flexibility. So my priority would be to have the tooling be ready to support any actual deployment environment, and then our focus would be on how do we start the investigation into the types of hardware that's necessary to run on bare metal in order to support an in-country deployment, and start working on those things in a progressive fashion.
Thanks, David. Thank you, Miller. If there are no further questions, I can pass it on to Simeon. Thank you, everyone.